Okay, so starting off this October turn, there's a little bit screwy with the sequence of play here in terms of how it works out over on the land phase. I'll explain that in a moment. But on the sea side, not much happens here. In the pre-turn, very little actually occurs. There's no ice forming yet. The one thing I do get to do is I get to drop dummies in with my fleets to help confuse the opponent. Remember, this is a semi-hidden movement. I could throw another one in here, but I think two basic options is enough to confuse whoever, you know, is looking and paying attention. I'm not going to be sailing ships down into the Danish Straits right now. Over here, okay, here's where the issue happens. So the first thing you do is you check for random events. Well, my random event was a Muscovite disease, which we'll talk about in a moment. I haven't finished it yet. Then you determine initiative, then you determine the weather. Well, disease affects an attrition check, and it would kind of make sense for the weather to apply to that. So I had to roll the weather beforehand. It's not absolutely necessary. For the weather, we jumped up into frost, right? From from good weather into frost, no mud. That's going to make rivers cheaper to travel over. But major rivers are only two extra movement points, so you can actually cross them. And it increases the effect of the attrition checks, which causes a problem with this disease. Also, after having talked to Ian via email, he suggested that a good answer for the attrition, for the epidemic effect on the Navy would be to hit the opposing Navy with that 24-point, in the case of the Russians, initial penalty once again. So I'm going to do that, and we'll shift some of these. We got kind of lucky. We rolled a 0 over on the attrition here, so we only had 5 units reduced. You can see over on my base track I've got some B quality units there. That's probably not enough to make the Swedes have an equal chance of being able to brush through these Russians, but it helps a little, I guess. So on the first impulse, and I'm going to start handling the Navy stuff first, but I've got to go impulse by impulse. I'm just going to do the movement points for there. We do have some interesting, exciting stuff, well, that I want to highlight here. First of all, the Russians, I was mistaken about the dummies. They actually happen at the same time the wind does, but it doesn't make a difference. The Russians got their lucky die roll, a 0 or a 1, so there's support convoys available right now. And with no ice and a campaign underway for Frederikshamn, we're in good position to move forward. Okay, so theoretically, and I'll do it here, but usually I just do it in my head, you're going to be using little arrows to mark where you move. Now, you don't have to do it when things are obvious like this. So, for the first movement point impulse, what we have to worry about, this is a pulsed game. First things first, I rolled a win. All I got was an ENE, which is going to mean these channels, these kind of blue ones, are all active. That's nice for the Russians. The Swedes would rather see the yellow ones active, but by the time the Swedish fleet gets up to that area, chances are the winds will have changed. They certainly have a chance to change. Okay. So, we worry about how many movement points each squadron has, and that's actually printed on them. So this support convoy only has 2 movement allowance. The detachment, well, that's based on the ships that I have in it, and that's this one. It's a galley. It has 3 movement points. It's a little faster. Now, I don't have a mission for it yet. And I want to make sure, because I'm planning on doing this Lacey's support. Yeah, that's not going to be a problem. The other option would be to set an escort mission, but I'll give that later. I don't think the Swedes are going to make it in time, I hope. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we check here. Only things with 4 and 5 movement allowance get to go. On the Swedish side, However, my main fleet, not this unit here, has a 4 and 5 movement. And yes, my mission is such that I can sail out and still conduct it. So I go out to the port itself. Okay. Well, I have more movement point locations. By the way, let's check the Swedish movement point allowance just to make sure I'm correct about that. We got some 5s here. Oh, no, that's not it. The flagships are slow. Yeah, looks like everything is speed 4. So we can move in the 4th movement point allowance. Now, and a 5th movement allowance doesn't give you additional speed, but or additional movement on the chart. It's just speed, which affects some other aspects, just in case that's a question. All right, 2nd movement point, we're doing 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's essentially everyone. So I can sail out to the Kronstadt port with them. And here I can follow the prevailing winds and set sail out there. Now we go to 3, and again it's only the fast stuff that's going. I'll continue. Oh, I forgot this sucker. He's formed up. He should have set sail for port. I'm going to try to land him somewhere like Abo. It's pretty safe as long as I've got ships to interdict anything the Russians try to do to prevent me. Okay, and now we go there. And I can again follow prevailing winds up to here without a problem. These guys can follow prevailing. Over here, I got a little bit of a problem now. I can automatically sail here because this wind is in existence and I'm not moving against the wind, so there's no real problems there. So I'm just going to sail into that space. We'll see maybe later when the Swedes try to sail against the wind, but now I'm over to the land side of things. Okay, a little bit of excitement here, and this is really the level of excitement of this game because there aren't a lot of pieces moving around. The Russians struck forward, did a forced march basically, three spaces to set up their blockade. They're on a very short timeline here. They only have 2 complete turns to take Friedrichshafen. Well, their prestige will not go up as much taking Friedrichshafen as the Swedish one will by getting to St. Petersburg. And the Russians made a fatal flaw. They forgot to leave. They can't leave a garrison, but they forgot to strip off some of their troops to, say, guard their supply depot. They just lost their depot here to the Swedes, who marched around this way, moving second, rather than taking the Russians head on. And they've actually cut the supply, so the Russians cannot actually proceed to invest that. This is where I should have been building my depot up here on a boat, where I would have been able to conduct sea supply instead. You're at too much risk with the land supply in this area. So the Russians just failed, essentially, and took some heavy losses. Both sides basically forced marched, though the Swedes went even further, took even heavier losses. They took that maximum 30%. We're going to see if the Swedes can make their way down. The Russian general is cursing himself for not being as good as he should be. Okay. And that is the first impulse, so now we move to the second. Okay, the winds table dealt us a bad effect here. No prevailing seasonal winds. That's all that really operates up here. There are no regular prevailing winds up here. That means things are going to be a little tricky now. Again, I'm far enough apart, I'm not going to use my little markers there. Wow, I don't remember what that's going to be. I'd like that to be a modifier to something, but I'm not sure what. Remember, that's from the peace process. It's kind of the Russians' will to conduct this war. And maybe to the operations table, given a modifier there in their favor. That seems like a good idea. And that only lasts during this negotiations era. Anyway, let's jump back here. So here's the problem. The Russians want to get somewhere. Now, they're going to have to catch the wind to sail to these tiny spaces. They're now in play here. The only problem here is they've got galley fleets, and I want to check them. They may not need to. So let's take a look at what the Swedes are going to do, and we'll see if, because they should have the same situation, but they have a regular fleet here. And this guy has no problem. He's following the prevailing. So I'm not sure what the small spaces there are for. I guess when you're going against them. Okay. So he's got to make the catch the wind check. There's a base check, I believe, of 4 for that. You know, I've stopped looking things up, although I can't find my dice, because that's what this game entirely becomes if you want to make sure you get the rules right. It becomes 5-10 minutes of rules lookup to move a piece of space, and that just feels so horrible. And then, yes, you get it right for a little while, but then you come up against something else that you say, oh my God, what's there? And if you don't have these little annotations in here, you're never sure what you should be doing. Okay. So I have some modifiers to this die roll, and I'm going to move them together. They're both going the same place. One of the modifiers is half his leadership. His leadership, I believe, is that 5. That I may look up. No, I know it's that 5. Okay, so he has a -2 to the die roll, and I don't think his ships are all quick. He's got heavy ships in there. Alright, so he doesn't make it anywhere. And this is for the first movement point. I gotta remember to do these. Now we're on the second movement point, and I have to worry about those galleys because they get to make a chance. And oops, I didn't get to move him yet. Okay, so indeed the galleys are not affected by catching the wind, but they are affected, I believe, by the number of spaces they have to move. So the Swedes are going here. I get to catch the wind again here, and I'm moving them together again. Maybe I should just discard my dummy until later. He makes it this time, but he only makes it to the little dots because he's going where there is no wind right now, so it's slower traveling. For the Russian fleets, and I should mark the one squadron that's a galley flotilla as such, just to help remind me. These transport convoys are always galleys, so I can't move these together though. The dummy, I'm just kind of cheating by doing so. I should actually just have it off the map. Because he doesn't have any choices. But I can just declare that I'm able to put him down at the beginning of any impulse, so it doesn't really do much. So here, I've got two movement point units, and I want to move them, I guess, and none of them have to catch the wind, into here. I'm heading for Kotka. That's where my missions are going to be. In a sense, my galley fleet, my detachment, doesn't really need to be there, but I want the extra firepower just in case the Swedes come in to attack. It's not going to do much, though. They're just a lot weaker than the regular naval units. Alright, we won't follow in this much detail here, but now it's back over to the land map. Oh no, I've got more movement impulses. So, I've got to check for wind. Alright, I'll just continue on and I'll come back. And here we're going to see the effect of that second impulse. The Russians launched out towards the Swedes, but they didn't actually attack them. That may have been a mistake. They could have pressed their supply costs. They took some losses, not significant. I think 3 unit steps. But the Swedes then marched forward and set up a blockade here. That's again 1, 2, 3 spaces. That's +4 on the supply table. They took 30% losses. They're just taking humongous losses. It's especially painful because they're taking it on their guard cavalry. I was lucky or clever here. That's a Finnish unit, not one of the never recoverable units, I think. I'm not sure. Maybe all guards are never recoverable. So I could just be expending my guard cav on this. But I needed 12 units to be able to move, and I needed that unit there, that force there. I've got a blockade here, which means I can keep pressing on. There's a problem here because there is a unit here that will stop and fight me. And that's kind of my screen for St. Petersburg. I also have the possibility to throw the guards in. Remember, I've played them into play. The problem is the Russians did not declare a defensive campaign. So these guys actually can't move. This is the only force I have that can move. And, well, it's going to get attacked, and I have to keep running with my Russians to chase the Swedes. I may have to actually try to pin them down. They're still in range 1, 2, 3, 4 for next impulse. I may have to fight them over there. All right. I'm very, very good at forgetting things, and this game is very good at causing things to be forgotten. There's just so many little pieces to every little bit. Now, there aren't a lot of little bits, but you have to pay attention to everything. Anyway, I handled the naval movement here, and you can see the Swedish fleet, the dummy and the regular fleet, have split up into 2 different hexes. They sailed through the central Baltic because it's easier when they have to catch the wind to do that. The galley fleet made a little bit of way no further. The Russians are kicking around back here, awaiting the Swedes to come forward to decide what they're going to do there. But then I ran into a problem here. So the Russians have the initiative again, a little red marker up there. And I've decided to storm over 1, 2, 3, 4 movement points, but I already did the attrition for the 4th movement point, which I probably shouldn't, because I can't be sure I can get into this space. In order to do so, I have to commit myself a dragoon or some other auxiliary which can scout, and there aren't a lot. They're cav. And now the Swedes get to look and see if they have anything that can screen, and they do not. Now, that means that it's fairly likely I'll get in, but I've got to find the right chart for that. It's going to be the reconnaissance table here. There's no screen, so -1. I'm in friendly territory. -2. We're not in snow yet. We're just in cold weather, right? Frost. Okay. So -2. I've got this woods here. I'm not sure that counts because there's a town there. So I'm just not certain about that. And somewhere or another I have a die. So I get a 3, which means I'm going to know what the opponent is within about 10%. You can see all the information that I'm going to find out here. That's important. There's like 11 strength points, 12 strength points there, which means there's 13 or 14. Now 13 or 14 divided by 3 is that, times 4 means I need about 19 strength points to be able to enter that hex. I have that. This is because the Russians have this tactical, this doctrinal limitation where they can't enter unless they overwhelm the Swedes. So I actually did make it in there, and I've already rolled the attrition for that. Now comes the problem. It's the Swedish initiative, because remember, the Russians went first, and the Swedes are going to have to, they want to get out of there. They want to keep running away. They may in fact want to skirt around this unit and try to slip through the swamp or something, because this can't really intercept them. It can't move around or anything. So when we go to the Swedish initiative, and there's only the 2 stacks that can move, because I have no other campaigns in progress. I could have put a defensive campaign for the Swedes, but they don't have any troops that want to move, and they're all in garrison. And the Russians, well, they wanted to run without the extra campaign going. Actually, they could have done it too. They were foolish not to. I'm going to give them a defensive campaign because it didn't cost them anything. They have the offensive campaign going. All right, so we're almost out of video, so I'm going to take a little break here, start putting it together, but I do have to look up to see how the Swedes get away. I don't think they use the normal withdrawal before battle, like at the beginning of a battle sequence, but I haven't been able to find it. I looked in the rules. All right. Okay, so I found the requirement. It's a leadership check. Well, we have this fella here, and his leadership's only 2, which means he has almost no chance of getting out of there. Which means he'll probably be pinned. He does not. So he's got to stick around, and what the hell, we'll give the Swedes the same advantage I gave the Russians if I can find the defensive chit. Oh well, I'll find it later. It seems to have hidden from me somewhere. I'm really good at losing things with this game for some reason. Okay, so it may be under the rules there, and I don't want to screw around too much. Or under here. Nope. All right, so and this is just to remind me, this isn't actually here. This is to remind me that the Muscovite fleet is in position to bombard that if I can use it. I can't really at this point. So now we have a battle, and we go to this battle sequence here. I haven't done one of these for a while, so let's see how this works out. We determine this participants. Check for surprise. Okay. Well, there's a little surprise table somewhere. Table for everything. Okay, now this is going to be 1 die roll. We went over this in the rules explanation. Our leaders, okay, our Swedish leader is aggressive, maybe even rash. He's rash, whereas the Russian leader is aggressive. Okay, so it's attacker aggressive. That's +1, and the defender rash. So we're at +2 on the table so far. The terrain here that looks like swamp to me. Maybe wooded swamp though. Yeah, that's going to be wooded swamp. So even though the road's there, that's in play. That can't be good. So that's plus or minus 3. So right now I have a +2. But the attacker is affected by the wooded swamp. What that means is I think the -3 comes into play on his die roll. And probably the +3 for the defender. And then there's no weather effect. So we'll roll a quick die. We get a 4. Now it was +2, that brings it to 6. +3 would make it 9. So the defender is going to be surprised in the swamp. The attacker is a 4, 5, 6, because these apply to both sides. -3 puts him to 3, no surprise. So the defender is surprised. What that means is he's not going to be able to build fieldworks, and he can't withdraw before battle. So he's stuck here in this battle. All right. And yes, we're working through it real slow, but we haven't looked at the system before on this. I've kind of blurred through it before, or buzzed through. We reveal the total strength points. Well, I can count them up, but I know what they are essentially. This guy's around 12. He's, I think, at 25, maybe 24 now because he lost a dragoon here. So that's good enough to talk there. Attempt to decline battle, not allowed because we had a surprise. Prevaricate. Okay. So the Swedes have no interest in that. Do the Russians? No, because all they have is a garrison there, and that can't come out and help itself, help the attack. So nobody's going to try to slow this down and bring more troops in. Reveal strengths again. Okay, but also at this time we reveal all kind of other information. Now what I'm going to do is work through each of those pieces of information. And it's going to take a long time, but this is the only time I'm going to do it in this kind of detail. All right, so the first thing we do is we determine the frontage. Now that's done off this chart. So like I said, I've got over 10 and below 21. So my Swedes, and let me make sure I have 2 dice here. My Swedes have a maximum frontage of 2. My Russians, they're above 21. They're below 36. They have a maximum frontage of 3. That's the biggest number of wings they can... I'm sorry, that's the number of wings they have available. Now we get to see how many wings they can put into play. Now, we're in a wooded swamp. only one wing can be in play by either player. So that's going to be an effect, and that means we're going to be rolling on this table, at least as a base. There may be some shifts. All right. Now remember, I always have to work my way through this because combat is fairly unlikely. This is a game where there's a lot of random stuff going on and a few key moves. But those key moves do require some thought, as we see with the Russians having to run back and catch the Swedes and taking a really expensive attrition on that way. And they only have 2 ops points assigned to this endeavor, so they're going to have a hard time making their way back and presenting that siege. These might help them. All right. Erect fieldworks. So here I can check to see if the Russians can erect fieldworks. The Swedes cannot. My leader doesn't help me. He's aggressive. He's not going to give me a bonus there. And there's a limit by the number of wings. I'm going to have to look this up. With all the charts and tables in the book, there still aren't enough to cover everything, and you have to refer to the rule book quite often for stuff like this. In this case, it's 1 pioneer for every 3 wings. I'm going to expend my pioneer for this. Oh, I don't have him. All I have is a sapper. That's not good enough. Sappers are only good at the sieges. Terrible, right? Looks like it. Okay, so I'm not going to get the entrenched bonus here. Oh, that means the next one is cav superiority. Well, I don't have any Russian cav here. I lost them on the move. That means the Swedes have the maximal cav here. They still have their guard cav kicking around in here. Yeah, that's not going to last long. So that means... I need more table to play this sucker, don't I? I'll be looking here, and I'm on the 4-to-1 chart. I'm going to get a -4 bonus. Now I'm going to mark these with some other little dice. I don't have enough dice to handle every direction I can, but when I'm doing this, especially spelling it all out and flipping back and forth, it's not easy. I can usually do it in my head. Artillery superiority. Okay, we both have artillery, but the Russians have more, so they're going to get, I believe it's a -1. Let me flip back to here and check that. Artillery superiority is a -1. Assault, they're all actually listed here. Assault superiority, grenadiers, well, I would have them probably if the Russians were using them, but I couldn't tell whether or not I'm allowed to set them up. I think you're supposed to be able to in this scenario, but again, the stuff for the specific game rather than the general rules is a little fuzzy and needs to be shaken out a little more. Screening superiority. I can use screening auxiliaries. Now, the Russians have none. The Swedes have none. They have a sapper and a priest there, which means we're each going to also commit a priest. That's going to increase the... Where did I put that? Jeez. Didn't I use something? Guess not. Okay. That's going to put the LCE up a level higher. Now, at this point, I got to grab a piece of paper because I'm going to have to start writing things down for this combat. But let me make sure that I've collected all the information I need here. Auxiliary superiority, that's the screen in the assaulting. Now we determine the LCE and we use the priest in here. So I'll be back in a moment. Alrighty. So I've written down my modifiers. The Swedes are going to be rolling, man, minuses are good. The Swedes are going to be rolling at -4, the Russians at -1 so far. But we have LCE and leaders to take into effect. So the LCE, well, in both cases, 20% or more of my force is in quality B. So both sides are going to pick B as their lead unit. That means they have to take half their losses on B units, but that's fine. The way the system works at the regimental scale, taking B losses would mean you're losing B quality units. Here, it means your B quality units are getting degraded. So yeah, your army quality degrades overall, but it's a different situation because it can grow back up to B in a way that your other armies might have trouble. Okay, so I look at the LCE matrices, and right now that means they're both at A because I committed a priest on each side. That increases it. But the Swedes have a minus to their LCE because they're defending. They don't like to defend, so they're actually at B. So that means the Russians, A to B, have a -1, and the Swedes, B to A, have a 0. So we put the Russians back up to -2. All right. And now we look at the leadership rankings, and the Russians are aggressive against rash. They get a bonus of -2 for that. That puts them up to a -4, whereas the Swedes are rash to aggressive. That gives them a -1, so they're at -5. Okay. Anything else here that we need to do? We need to know how many units would have to break. So this is the retreat threshold. Now, the Russians are at A, and they have 3 columns, so they have to lose 3 wings, so they have to lose 2 wings to break. Whereas the Swedes are at B and only have 2 wings, so they only have to lose 1 to break. So chances are the Swedes are going to break. Where they're going to run to, I'm not sure, because they got attacked from this direction. So they may start running in the direction they want to go. There are some additional counters. I think I mentioned this already here somewhere. These, the disrupted and shaken counters, which I believe are for the advanced combat system. Okay, which I don't have downloaded. Now, HDC Arctic Combat, this is going to affect one particular column on here. So the enemy LCE for the Swedes is +3. That's going to affect the row shifts on that. So this actually becomes -4, -1. Whereas the Russians have an A quality, so that's -5, -1. All right. Do we each roll our own die? We're all limited to 1 wing each, so we're going to be rolling on this column. I've got to look up to make sure that we only roll a single die for this, or we each roll a die. I think we each roll a die. I think I went over that, but I went. Indeed, that is the case, and I'm running out of power here. So let's make a roll and see what happens. All right, the Russians rolled a 1 at -4. Well, a 1 would be this row. -4 means I'm going to do 2 hits. Okay, that's not a lot. But I also knocked 2 Swedish wings out, which means the Swedes are retreating. And for the Swedes, oh, I'm sorry, that's not right. Only -1 for the number of wings. So only 1 wing is knocked out. So 2 casualties, 1 wing. And I'll write that down real quick. And for the Swedes, I rolled a 4 at -5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That means I do 2 casualties and only 1 wing. Same effect, but here's the difference. The Swedes could only take 1 wing as a casualty, so they have to retreat. The Russians are still there. They have a possibility of pursuit. We'll get on to that in a moment, but I want to take my casualties, which I'm just going to be shifting some things down. Now I'm tethered to a power cord. I have to worry about leader losses here. There was only 1 round of combat, and I'm going to be rolling a die to see how many troops each side lost, or how many leaders. So the Swedes have taken a single leader loss, whereas the Russians took none. Okay. So how do we figure out the Swedish leader loss? Well, here's the problem. First thing we have to do is to see if it is my commander, my captain, general, or whatever. And let's see. On a 0, it will be him. Otherwise, it'll be another participating leader. Well, there's only one other leader in this stack, his subordinate. If his subordinate wasn't there, I'd be pulling out of the officers' mess for random leaders. Okay, so I'm going to lose somebody kind of good here, this marshal. I don't have to replace him, but I couldn't relieve him. And now we see what happens to him on this little table here. 7, he is captured. So I'll put him over here with the rest of the Russian captures. All right. Now what? Well, now we deal with retreating and pursuit. And I'm going to have to read those again. This game is just too much to keep in my head. Okay. So we've got our retreat. And now we roll a die for pursuit. Now, pursuit check table, which we have to look at. Looking to see if any of these affect. Pursuer's actual frontage, now the frontage is the same. Value from the Go personality matrix. Ooh. That was a -2, right? No. Yeah. Aggressive versus rash. So I have a -2 there. LCE for the pursued was a B, so that brings me up to -1. No terrain, I'm going to be heading down this way. And we make leader checks as well. So let's make those leader checks first. The Russian leader's like a 5, the Swedes a 2. They both made their checks. The pursued, that adds 1 to it. I don't remember what my number was. It was -2, -1, 0. So I need a 0 or 1 to rout the opponent. And I got that. Damn! Alright, so that was unlikely. If there is a rout, that means we roll here on the pursued table, and the pursuing side has no cavalry, so that's going to be the less than 4 table here, because he just has nothing there. So I make a straight up roll on that, and I'm going to get 2, what are these? 2 infantry, an artillery, and another leader in losses. That have to be additional losses taken. Now, I'll take care of the tracking on there, but some of those losses are going to be prisoners of war. The artillery automatically is, and more than that, I can actually, if I had room for it, I don't in this artillery command, but I could actually use that artillery. Instead, I'm just going to spike the guns, and that means the Swedes can rebuild them, I think. I'm not sure how. It may just destroy them. But, yeah. And the infantry, well, because this is a rout, normally it's 25% of the loser's forces captured and 10% of the winner's force that was lost. Well, the winner is not going to lose anything. He lost a couple of strength points, right? 10% of that is not going to lose anything. But the loser lost 2 strength points already. He's going to lose 2 more. That puts him to 4. 50% of that, double the 25% for losing, because it's a rout, means he's going to lose 2 of his strength points as prisoners of war, which will go over in here. And they can actually be exchanged, but they'll come off there. And in addition to their other losses because of the rout, the Swedes had to run 4 hexes away, maximum movement point. They had to take an attrition check for that because it's not just a 1 hex move, which cost them another 3 units. Their guard cav is getting weaker and weaker, and I still don't know if I can recover that. And the one final thing is assessing prestige levels for this. Now, the Russians had superiority, so they don't get any prestige off this battle. There was no prestige to risk at this. However, there was the Captain General present at the battle. Actually, there were 2. So the Russians gain a point of prestige for having won a battle with captain generals involved. I think that's it for the impulse. There's a reorganization phase, but that's really, you know, if I had lost my last leader. Now, I lost one more marshal out of the general officer pool. He's actually dead. He's cashed in up there. But I think that's the end of my one impulse here, which means, hey, it's time to go to the fourth impulse. And remember, I'm also on this map, so I'll have to go here and then come back here to see what happens. Now, the Swedes are getting closer and closer to St. Petersburg. If I can wipe them out, that's great. But if I can't wipe them out, I've got a bit of a problem here, which is that if they make it to St. Petersburg, they get their prestige anyway. I don't think they have to have their full force, the strength points that they had to create the campaign event. If they do, they can't possibly make it. So now, right now, their goal is to get to St. Petersburg and perhaps, oh, no, that's the defensive. All right, somewhere or another, they've got their special campaign. I don't know where it is. I'll dig it up, but I want to keep this here for now. I got to find their special demonstration. I thought this was the demonstration, not the DCP. Anyway, we'll be back for that final input. I wanted to touch on a point of contention here. There's a restriction on retreat, as there is in almost any game. But the first is not into an enemy-occupied hex. Great. Along the easiest movement point path available. Well, there would be a couple. Basically, the way I went down this road, or up this way, possibly into here, but then things get ugly. So it seemed like the roads were the better choice. Now, the next one is to the adjacent hex that the units entered the battle hex from. And then they start going towards, hey, get back towards your own stuff. Okay. The problem with this is the attacker came from this hex, and I know, to the adjacent hex that the units entered the battle from does not seem to imply that in any sense. However, I think that this is what they mean. That I can't go into the hexes that the attacker came from. There's no strict prohibition on it that I saw. Maybe there is. I can't go through the hex I retreated that has enemy units in it. And we already have that unless I can overrun them. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be a strict prohibition against it, but my feeling is that this kind of game usually has that kind of restriction, and I just don't trust these rules as being solid enough to not kind of weave my own interpretations into it, because it does not make sense to me that the attacker marching this way, I would be able to retreat back the same way he came. This is to the Swedes' advantage that they can retreat here. There's no question. The way I'm interpreting the rules, if they get to St. Petersburg, they get a lot of prestige off that, even if they're chased the whole way by a Russian army and get wiped out on the way after they get there. Everything kind of starts happening at once here. After that military operations over on the land phase, now we're over here on the naval side. And again, I'm kind of not doing them completely in conjunction. I'm doing impulse by impulse, and that's good enough. But I handle the naval first. But we had a new wind show up and a gale with it. West-southwest wind that's going to be chasing those Swedes. Now, the Swedes have an advantage in that they're going to be able to move quickly enough. This thing's got a range of 1. So it doesn't quite reach them. So I'm assuming the little spaces count. If not, I'm going to be taking damage as this chases me. Yeah, because this wind is running up this way into there or north. I don't know which direction it's going to go in, but it definitely does add a little bit of spice to this operation. Okay, so the Swedish fleet has slipped in here. This is just the dummy here. Into Kronstadt. Now, I had the option to attack at Friedrichshain and perhaps succeed in getting an attack in. I could have done a search if I wanted to do that, but instead I'm going to try to fulfill my show of force here, because as of right now I don't believe, well, see, they may be achieving their requirement there. I have to look that up, because the goal the Russians have, let's see if they have a goal. No, they do not. They have their troop convoy there, or their convoy there, and they have their galley flotilla, but neither one has orders. I don't know that as the Swedes. They may be accumulating in action as well. But what they're not doing is they're not succeeding in influencing anything over here on the land map because the Russians aren't there. If the Russians start moving there, then maybe I have to cope with them and bring my battle fleet into play there. But as it stands right now, I'd rather just make sure I get my goal done. The wind started drifting up this way. It didn't get close to anything. These guys were a lot faster because they got the jump. Well, not a lot faster. They're the same speed, but they got the jump of one action, because on the first action, the gale doesn't actually move. And then this galley is moving its way forward to try to land some troops there. That's the one reason I might have wanted to engage, was to get my troops into play. To prevent the Russians from being able to intercept those troops. I don't think they can, though. So I'm kind of inching my way forward, not really worrying about them too much. Over here on the land side, got an interesting situation, because I'm within range of my Captain General here. Oh no, I'm not. I don't know if you can see that. If he has a range of 3. 1, 2, yeah, I am within range. So I can coordinate these two troops if I make a proper roll. I have to make his leadership roll for that. If I do that, that means that if these two both land on the Swedes, I can combine them against the Swedes, which might be the best way of wiping them out, basically. And I get a sufficient roll, so that's what I'm probably going to do, is try to move into place there. Now that means another high attrition roll to march down here, and I'm basically giving this sucker up. That's life. I'm afraid that option's not available. I don't have any dragoons left. I don't have anything that can scout anymore. All I got is a sapper and a priest. This guy doesn't have any auxiliaries. Ooh, I forgot to kill Swedish battery. So I actually can't enter that Swedish hex unless I make a leadership roll, if I make it there. This is an expensive charge forward to try to do that. Erg. I don't know. I think I have to, though. I don't see any other way. I'm not going to be able to take this on. I think I have to try to wipe them out. At high cost, the Russians were able to make it down here. Another 7 losses over on their quality. The Swedes didn't get away for free, but they did get away. They took 3 units, and again, they're losing that guard cav, which they really wish they weren't losing, because I don't know if it goes away. I only moved 1 hex. I could have charged down as far as here, but I've got this road available to me, and if the Russians don't kind of block my way, I'm in okay shape there. So I slipped away successfully. Something I forgot during the battle, there's a post-battle operations loss. God knows how much I forget. The Russians were the attacker. They won, so they get a -3. The Swedes get a +3 for being pursued. So the Swedes got a 4. That doesn't hurt them as the defender. The Russians got a 5, -1 is 4, they're not hurt. So neither one lost any operations points. I ran across that while I was just looking at potential losses to operations points somewhere or another here. The op loss chart when I'm looking at how I gain operations points. I'll roll them in front of me since I'm there. Okay, the Swedes, now these are a +3. These aren't going to generate any additional operations. And we're going to lose some off that chart, which is now a complete mess with all the losses recorded on it. And with no forces, no mobile forces within 1, 2, 3, 4, this one's in danger. But in this area, I think all these clear up. I gotta check that, but I gotta find the rule book for that. me make sure that that's correct. I don't think it's the case. I think the garrisons are sufficient to keep these areas depleted. So, yeah, they're just not going to recover until they become backfield areas, and this is where the war occurs. There is, of course, the possibility of shoving your way onto this northern map. Entry road northwest of Tavis. I don't know where that is. Jeez. I'm just not seeing that location. Tivascula. Entry road northwest of Tivascula. Entry main road north of Kristianstad. That'll be this one. It's this one. So these are the two places where I'm going to be able to get onto that other map as an option. All right, over to admin for the naval. I've actually done the admin over here. I'll record that by pushing this forward. Okay, so the big changes in position here. Well, first of all, I could assign an order. I have this escort order for the Russians. I could have pulled new orders for either side. It didn't work out for me that made any sense. The fleet I was planning to escort with, it wouldn't have been created yet. I would have had to float it. This guy's got a task, and he's gonna, honestly, I think he's actually succeeded in it. He sat there. He couldn't have made it the first round, could he? So I don't know how long he's been there. But he's been there for a while. I think he's actually succeeded in his goal there, but I'll give him a 3 marker to try to remind me. It doesn't do any good except for the prestige of the Navy. They were there. The Army didn't bother showing up. So they can go home and say, yeah, we succeeded. The Swedes are beginning their stand there. Now that makes a problem for the Russians because, well, I could have interdicted this space with an auxiliary to make life a little bit more difficult. But as it is, the Russians can kind of slip home through Vyborg because I didn't want to waste an auxiliary on that. I have a couple of lights. I want to use them so that I can detect a Russian if I need to. Detecting them here doesn't really help me too much because they'll slip away. It's good if I'm trying to prevent the Russians from escaping from St. Petersburg. It's not really a way to keep them from getting back to it. The only way to do that would be to actually blockade St. Petersburg, and that is not what my task is. I could do that, but I wouldn't be accomplishing my goal. On top of that, let's see, I did form up a new Russian flotilla down here at St. Petersburg. This is a major fleet. It has no orders, and my plan with that, it's actually in fitting out right now, so we'll have to shift up to the port, but my plan is to attack the Swedish fleet and try to disrupt what they're up to. Now, I'm probably not as big. Knowing what the Swedish fleet is, I actually know I'm not as big, but the Russians don't really know that, and they do want to try to make that disruption. Now, there can be a problem because there's a lot of prestige involved in a naval battle. If you cause ships to sink in a naval battle, there's significant prestige that can change hands in that. I don't want to assign an order to that because it's coming up on winter. I'm not going to be able to do much with my boats very shortly. Some repairs went underway. I don't think I rolled for my Swedish reinforcements. Well, actually, it's not just Swedes. It's Russians and Swedes. So I'll have to roll for them as well. But otherwise, we're ready to rock into the October-November turn. Now, I've got this marked as the turn of the coup, but I'm not sure if it is. It may be the November-December turn. I may have mistakenly written that down. I'll check that. And indeed, it is the November-December turn that I have to worry about that, so I don't check it next turn. I was afraid that was the case. So it's checked at the end of the year. Now, the Swedes could trigger it early, and in fact, if they think they can't make it to St. Petersburg, they should have triggered it this turn, because this is as close as they can get without making it. But I think they can actually get there and trigger it. In fact, they may not be able to trigger it early unless they make it there. I don't remember. Anyway, minor advantages to triggering it. Yeah, I mean, that's not what their goal is. Their goal isn't to cause the coup so much as to get prestige. So it doesn't really matter. What I want to do is I want to succeed in my show of force. I don't want to succeed in the effect of it. I don't care about the effect that much. It could make life easier if there's a truce or something to get out of that bad situation that I'm in over there. But the Swedes also rolled up some nice reinforcements. They got 2 more ships of the line, maximum reinforcements that they can get. So their fleet's in pretty good shape. Unfortunately, like I said, winter's coming. The Russian fleet will probably be largely ready by that time, and the Russians start getting better reinforcements as the time goes on. In this first year, they don't get as many reinforcements. Moving into next turn, we still have that west-southwest wind. If that stays in place, the gale will stay in place and maybe cause some problems. It's especially troublesome to this guy, although it's heading up this way, so it probably won't be too big a deal. All right, up this one goes, and long turn, involved turn, and not a lot of pieces move. That's the thing with the game. Very, very few things are happening that the player really gets to do something about. It's mainly a lot of die rolling. I kind of like that. You don't have to think about thousands of pieces all over the place. You got a couple key decisions to make, and they're really kind of focused on a couple central locations. You know, I got a couple pieces here I'm moving. I got a couple fleets to play with. That's it. But there's a lot of rules, and there's a high expenditure for every little thing you do in terms of looking up the rules, looking up the charts, rolling on all those charts.